You look at that river gently flowing by. You notice the leaves rustling with the wind. You hear the birds. You hear the tree frogs. In the distance, you hear a cow. You feel the grass. The mud gives a little bit on the riverbank. It's quiet. It's peaceful. And all of a sudden, it's a gear shift inside you. And it's like taking a deep breath and going, oh yeah, I forgot about this.
This is the first picture of the Earth from space that any of us ever saw. It was taken on Christmas Eve, 1968, during the Apollo 8 mission.
Within relatively comfortable boundaries. But we are filling up that thin shell of atmosphere with pollution.
I'm Al Gore. I used to be the next president of the United States of America. I don't find that particularly funny.
I've been trying to tell this story for a long time, and I feel as if I've failed to get the message across. I was in politics for a long time. I'm proud of my service.
You gotta be kidding me. This is a national disaster. Get every doggone Greyhound bus line in the country and get the asses moving to New Orleans. That's they thinking small, man, and this is a major, major, major deal.
What do you need right now?
There are good people who are in politics in both parties who hold this at arm's length because if they acknowledge it and recognize it, then the moral imperative to make big changes is inescapable.
And let's fix the biggest damn crisis in the history of this country.
Scouted out landing spots, and they lost radio contact when they went around the dark side of the moon, and there was inevitably some suspense. Then when they came back in radio contact, they looked up and they snapped this picture, and it became known as Earthrise. And that one picture exploded in the consciousness of humankind. It led to dramatic changes. Within 18 months of this picture, the modern environmental movement had begun. The next picture was taken on the last of the Apollo missions, Apollo 17. This one was taken on December 11th, 1972, and it is the most commonly published photograph in all of history. And it's the only picture of the Earth from space that we have where the sun was directly behind the spacecraft so that the Earth is fully lit up and not partly in darkness. The next image I'm going to show you has almost never been seen. It was taken by a spacecraft called the Galileo that went out to explore the solar system. And as it was leaving Earth's gravity, it turned its cameras around and took a time-lapse picture of 1 day's worth of rotation, here compressed into 24 seconds. Isn't that beautiful? This image is a magical image in a way. It was made by a friend of mine, Tom Van Sant. He took 3,000 separate satellite pictures taken over a 3-year period, digitally stitched together, and he chose images that would give a cloud-free view of every square inch of the Earth's surface. All of the landmass is accurately portrayed. When that's all spread out, it becomes an iconic image. I show this because I want to tell you a story about 2 teachers I had. One that I didn't like that much, the other who was a real hero to me. I had a grade school teacher who taught geography by pulling a map of the world down in front of the blackboard. I had a classmate in the 6th grade who raised his hand and he pointed to the outline of the east coast of South America, and he pointed to the west coast of Africa, and he asked, "Did they ever fit together?" And the teacher said, "Of course not. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." That student went on to become a drug addict and a ne'er-do-well. The teacher went on to become science advisor in the current administration. But you know, the teacher was actually reflecting the conclusion of the scientific establishment of that time. Continents are so big, obviously, they don't move. But actually, as we now know, they did move. They moved apart from one another, but at one time they did, in fact, fit together. But that assumption was a problem. It reflected the well-known wisdom that what gets us into trouble is not what we don't know, it's what we know for sure that just ain't so. This is actually an important point, believe it or not, because there is another such assumption that a lot of people have in their minds right now about global warming that just ain't so. The assumption is something like this: the Earth is so big, we can't possibly have any lasting harmful impact on the Earth's environment. And maybe that was true at one time, but it's not anymore. And one of the reasons it's not true anymore is that the most vulnerable part of the Earth's ecological system is the atmosphere. Vulnerable because it's so thin. My friend, the late Carl Sagan, used to say, if you had a big globe with a coat of varnish on it, the thickness of that varnish relative to that globe is pretty much the same as the thickness of the Earth's atmosphere compared to the Earth itself. And it's thin enough that we are capable of changing its composition. That brings up the basic science of global warming, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you know it well. The sun's radiation comes in the form of light waves, and that heats up the Earth, and then some of the radiation that is absorbed and warms the Earth is re-radiated back into space in the form of infrared radiation. And some of the outgoing infrared radiation is trapped by this layer of atmosphere and held inside the atmosphere. And that's a good thing because it keeps the temperature of the Earth within certain boundaries, keeps it relatively constant and livable. But the problem is this thin layer of atmosphere is being thickened by all of the global warming pollution that's being put up there. And what that does is it thickens this layer of atmosphere. More of the outgoing infrared is trapped. And so the atmosphere heats up worldwide. That's global warming. Now, that's the traditional explanation. Here's what I think is a better explanation.
Global warming, or none like it hot. You're probably wondering why your ice cream went away. Well, Susie, the culprit isn't foreigners, it's global warming.
Global wobble?
Yeah. Meet Mr. Sunbeam. He comes all the way from the sun to visit Earth.
Hello, Earth. Just popping in to brighten your day. La 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 la. And now I'll be on my way.
Not so fast, Sunbeam. We're greenhouse gases. You ain't going nowhere.
Oh! Ah! Oh! Ah! Oh! Oh, God, it hurts!
Pretty soon, Earth is chock full of sunbeams. They're rotting corpses heating our atmosphere.
How do we
get rid of the greenhouse gases?
Fortunately, our handsomest politicians came up with a cheap, last-minute way to combat global warming. Ever since 2063, we simply drop a giant ice cube into the ocean every now and then.
Just like Daddy puts in his drink every morning. And then he gets mad.
Of course, since the greenhouse gases are still building up, it takes more and more ice each time. Thus, solving the problem once and for all.
But...
Once and for all!
This is the image that started me in my interest in this issue. And I saw it when I was a college student because I had a professor named Roger Revelle who was the first person to propose measuring carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere.